We're only 1,000 subscribers away from unlocking a secret reward. Be the reason it happens faster. Some words cut deeper than a knife. And some rooms go silent in a way that feels louder than screaming. That night, at a dinner meant to celebrate my sister's engagement, my own mother stood in front of everyone I loved and called me a failure. She said it with a smile on her face, like it was a joke, like it didn't matter that I was sitting right there. But what she didn't know, what nobody at that table knew, was that the man across from her, the 4-star general she was so desperate to impress, already knew exactly who I was. And in the next 60 seconds, my mother's whole world was about to shift under her feet. This is the story of the night I stopped being invisible. Stay with me till the end, because what happens next will surprise you. My name is Claire, and for most of my life, I was the disappointment in my family. My younger sister, Madison, was the golden child. She was beautiful, she was social, and she had just gotten engaged to a man named Ethan, a kind, quiet officer whose father happened to be one of the most respected 4-star generals in the country. My mother had been planning this engagement dinner for weeks like it was a royal wedding. New dress, new china, new nervous energy every time she mentioned the general. Me? I was the daughter who joined the army instead of going to law school like she wanted. The daughter who missed birthdays because of deployments. The daughter who never called enough, never visited enough, never was enough. My mother used to say, I threw my life away. She never asked what I actually did overseas. She never asked why I came home quieter than I left. To her, I wasn't a soldier. I was an embarrassment, she had to explain to her friends. So when she called me 2 weeks before the dinner and said, please just don't embarrass your sister this time, I wasn't even surprised. I just said okay, and hung up the phone. I told myself I'd sit quietly, smile politely, and leave early. I didn't know that night was about to change everything. The dinner was exactly what I expected, until it wasn't. The restaurant was beautiful, the kind of place with soft lighting and waiters who never seemed to make a sound. Madison looked radiant. Ethan looked nervous in the best way. And at the head of the table sat his father, tall, silver-haired, wearing his dress uniform with 4 stars gleaming on his shoulders. My mother was glowing, practically floating from guest to guest, making sure everyone knew this was her daughter marrying into that family. Then it was my turn to be introduced. She put her hand on my shoulder, laughed a little too loudly, and said to the general, and this is my other daughter, Claire. She's the family failure. We don't really talk about her career. A few people chuckled awkwardly. My sister looked down at her plate. I felt my face go hot, but I said nothing. I had learned a long time ago that arguing with my mother in public only made things worse. I picked up my glass of water and looked away, trying to disappear into the noise of the restaurant. That's when the general stood up. The whole table went quiet. He wasn't looking at my mother. He was looking straight at me. Major Claire Bennett, he said, his voice calm but carrying across the entire table. It's good to see you again. For a second, nobody moved. My mother's smile froze on her face like it had been carved out of stone. You two know each other? She asked, her voice suddenly small. The general nodded slowly. Know her? Ma'am, your daughter served under my command overseas. She led a team through one of the most dangerous extractions I've ever witnessed. She got 4 soldiers home safely that night, soldiers who would not have made it out without her. One of them was my nephew. The silence at that table was the loudest thing I had ever heard. My mother's wineglass tilted in her hand, and for a moment I thought she might actually drop it. Madison stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time in years. Ethan looked between his father and me, stunned. She never told us any of this, my mother finally said, almost to herself. The general's eyes softened, but there was something firm underneath his words. Maybe, he said, because nobody ever asked. I felt something crack open in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Just years of silence finally being seen. I want to be clear about something. I didn't plan this moment. I didn't orchestrate it. I hadn't even told Ethan that his father's unit was the one I'd served with. It never came up, and honestly, I never thought it mattered. But once the truth was out on that table, I realized I had a choice to make. I could smooth it over, the way I always did. Change the subject, make my mother comfortable again, protect her from her own words like I had my whole life. Or I could finally let the truth stand exactly where it landed. I chose the second one. It's all right, I said quietly, looking at my mother instead of the general. She's right. I never really talk about it. It's easier that way. I paused, letting the words settle. But since we're being honest tonight, I didn't join the army to run away from this family. I joined because I wanted to matter somewhere. And for a long time, I told myself it didn't matter that it wasn't here. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in my life, I watched her struggle to find something to say. I wasn't trying to humiliate her. I wasn't trying to destroy the evening. I just wasn't going to shrink myself anymore to keep her comfortable. The general spoke again, and this time his voice was gentler, but every word landed like a verdict. Ma'am, I've stood in rooms with senators and commanders, and I don't scare easily. But that night, watching your daughter make split-second decisions that saved 4 young men's lives, that stayed with me. She didn't hesitate. She didn't ask for credit. She just did what needed to be done. He turned to Madison and Ethan. You're marrying into a family that raised someone like that. I hope you both understand what that means. My mother sat frozen, her carefully built evening completely rearranged in front of her. The story she had been telling about me for years, the failure, the disappointment, the daughter she didn't understand, had just been rewritten in front of the one person she most wanted to impress. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something unfamiliar in her expression. Not pride exactly. Not yet. But something close to it. Something close to regret. Claire, she said softly, why didn't you ever tell me? I looked at her steadily. Because every time I tried to talk about my life, you changed the subject. Because you already decided who I was before I ever got the chance to show you. Nobody at the table said a word. The restaurant noise faded into the background. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about finally being heard. The dinner didn't end in shouting or dramatic exits. It ended quietly, which somehow felt more powerful. Before we left, my mother pulled me aside near the entrance. Her hands were shaking slightly. I'm sorry, she said. I don't think I ever really saw you. I saw the daughter, who didn't turn out the way I planned, and I stopped looking any further than that. It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't erase years of feeling small in my own family. But it was real, and it was the first time she had ever said those words to me. I don't need you to understand everything I've done, I told her. I just needed you to stop deciding it was worthless before you knew anything about it. She nodded, and for the first time in a long time, she hugged me like she meant it. In the weeks that followed, things didn't magically become perfect. My mother and I are still learning how to talk to each other differently. But she started asking questions. Real ones. About my service, about my life, about who I actually am. And at Madison's wedding a few months later, when the general raised his glass for a toast, he looked at me from across the room and gave a small, respectful nod. That nod meant more to me than any apology ever could. I used to think I had to earn my place in my own family. I used to think being overlooked was just something I had to accept. But that night taught me something important. Sometimes the people closest to us only see the story they've already decided to believe. It's not always cruelty. Sometimes it's just carelessness, or fear, or old habits that never got questioned. You don't always need a general standing up at dinner to prove your worth. You already have it, whether anyone in the room acknowledges it or not. If there's someone in your life who's made you feel small, remember this. Their opinion of you was never the whole truth. It was just their limited view of it. And sometimes, all it takes is one moment of honesty to finally set the record straight. If this story moved you, let me know in the comments. Has someone ever misjudged you until the truth finally came out? I'd love to hear your story. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.